It was one of those mornings that felt colder than the thermometer suggested. The kind of cold that crawled past your coat collar and made your breath curl in the air like smoke. People moved quickly along 7th Avenue in downtown Birmingham, Alabama, clutching coffee cups, adjusting scarves, hurrying past one another like they were late for something more important than pain or worry. Outside the Children's Medical Center, where hope and heartbreak lived side by side, a man stepped out of a sleek black Range Rover. His name was Daniel Carter, and if you saw him walking down the street, you'd think he had it all tailored. Coat, polished shoes, a face that had known power and wealth for years, but today, his eyes were tired, and the weight of the small girl he cradled in his arms said more about him than any business card ever could. Her name was Lily, 6 years old, brown curls tucked under a pink knitted hat. She was bundled in a blanket, motionless except for the soft blinking of her eyes. A car accident 3 months ago had taken her ability to walk, and since then, Daniel's world had been unraveling. The doctors were kind but honest. There were chances, of course. There always were, but not many. Not soon. And never guaranteed. Daniel had built empires out of ideas, out of numbers and negotiations. But this was something money couldn't fix, and that made him feel helpless, in a way that no corporate war or courtroom ever had. As he approached the revolving doors of the hospital, he passed a boy sitting cross-legged on a flattened cardboard box near the entrance. The boy looked no older than 10, maybe 11. His coat was oversized, sleeves rolled up at the cuffs. One of his boots was held together with duct tape. A worn red beanie covered most of his head, and in his hands was a weathered notebook filled with scribbles and sketches. He wasn't begging. He wasn't asking for anything. He just watched. People barely noticed him anymore. He'd been sitting there on and off for weeks, maybe months. Some said he was waiting for someone. Others said he was just another homeless kid who'd lost his way. The hospital staff had tried moving him once or twice, but he never caused trouble, and he always came back. Daniel barely registered the boy as he passed. He was too focused on Lily, on the rhythm of her breathing, on the heaviness in his chest that he'd started calling grief. But the boy noticed Daniel. He watched the way the man's arms tightened protectively around the child, watched the little girl's eyes wide, quiet, still, and then, with a voice so calm and unexpected, he called out, "Sir, I can make your daughter walk again." The words cut through the cold like a bell dot. Daniel stopped mid-step. He turned his head slowly, unsure if he'd heard correctly, or if maybe the exhaustion was playing tricks on him. "What did you just say?" he asked, tightening his grip on Lily. The boy stood. He tucked his notebook under his arm and stepped forward, not with arrogance, but with a strange kind of certainty. "I said, I can help her walk again." Daniel stared at him. The boy didn't flinch, didn't smile. His voice didn't shake. It wasn't a joke, or a plea for attention. It was a statement. Direct, honest, unshakable. For a moment, Daniel just stood there. The sounds of the street seemed to dull around him, the horns, the footsteps, the distant hum of the hospital machinery. All of it faded into the background. "You think this is funny," he said, sharper now, his jaw tightening. "No, sir," the boy replied. "You don't even know her," Daniel said, suddenly angry. "I don't need to," the boy said. "I can still help." Daniel looked the kid up and down. His clothes were worn, his boots falling apart. He had the look of someone who hadn't had a hot meal in days. What could this child possibly know about healing? "You're, what, 10?" Daniel said. 11, the boy answered softly. "What's your name?" "Zayn." Daniel hesitated, his fingers flexing around Lily's blanket. He was about to say something else, maybe a sharp dismissal, maybe a quiet curse, when a nurse came out of the hospital and held the door open. He walked inside without another word, his heart pounding harder than before. But no matter how much he tried to push it away, that boy's voice echoed in his mind. "I can make your daughter walk again." Inside the hospital, things moved as usual. Charts were updated. Gentle voices gave gentle warnings, machines beeped, and monitors blinked. But Daniel wasn't present. Not really. Even as the specialist spoke words like stimulation, rehabilitation, long-term outcomes, all he could hear was that one sentence. That impossible, ridiculous, deeply unsettling sentence. By afternoon, the sky outside had lightened, but Daniel's thoughts had grown heavier. He carried Lily back to the car, set her gently in her booster seat, and paused. Zayn was still there, sitting in the same place. This time his eyes were already on Daniel. Daniel hesitated. Then, without meaning to, he crossed the street. "You still think you can help?" he asked. Zayn stood again, his notebook now resting by his side. "I do." Daniel glanced back at the car, where Lily sat watching them with quiet curiosity. "What exactly do you think you can do?" Zayn took a small breath. "My mother used to be a physical therapist. She worked at a community clinic before she got sick. She taught me how to help people. Said the body doesn't forget how to move, it just needs to be reminded." "You're not a doctor," Daniel said. "I never said I was. You're a kid. I'm someone who wants to help." Daniel looked at him for a long time, unsure whether he was standing in front of a delusional street kid or someone with a spark of something else. He wasn't sure what made him speak next. "We come to this hospital every Saturday," he said. "Same time. If you're serious, meet us at Harrington Park tomorrow. Noon." Zayn nodded once. "I'll be there." The next day, Daniel didn't even realize how early he left the house. He didn't want to admit it, not even to himself, but some part of him was hoping for what? He wasn't sure. A miracle, a mistake, a distraction. Harrington Park wasn't the kind of place where miracles were expected. The grass was patchy, the basketball nets hung crooked, and the benches creaked when you sat on them. But when Daniel arrived, Zayn was already there. He stood by the old oak tree, a gym bag slung over one shoulder, and a folded towel at his feet. His red beanie looked even more worn in the daylight. He didn't smile when he saw them, just nodded. Like he'd been waiting his whole life for this exact moment. Lily blinked at him from her wheelchair. "Hi," Zayn said gently. "I'm Zayn," she gave a small smile. "I'm Lily." Daniel folded his arms, skeptical but quiet. "What now?" Zayn knelt on the grass and pulled a few items from his bag, a rice-filled cloth pack, a small ball, a jar of cocoa butter. "My mum used to use these. Nothing fancy, just tools to warm muscles and loosen tight spots." Daniel watched every move carefully, ready to intervene at the first sign of trouble. Zayn looked up at Lily. "Is it okay if I touch your legs? Just to help stretch them a little." Lily glanced at her dad. Daniel nodded. "Go ahead, sweetheart." Zayn worked slowly, gently. There was no rush in his hands, no fear in his voice. He talked softly to Lily while he worked, asking about her favorite cartoons, her favorite color, what her teddy bear's name was, and somehow, she talked back. Short answers at first, then giggles. After 20 minutes, Zayn tapped her knee and asked, "Can you feel that?" She paused a little. Daniel leaned forward. "What? Like pressure?" Zayn smiled. "That's good." Daniel couldn't explain it, but something inside him, something tired, something buried, started to lift, just a little. After an hour, Zayn packed up. He didn't ask for money, didn't ask for food, just said, "I'll see you next week." Daniel drove home in silence, Lily humming softly in the back seat. He didn't say anything to her, but he noticed the way she kept tapping her toes inside her shoes. The next weekend, Zayn came again, and the next and the one after that. Each time, Lily improved, just a little, just enough to keep hope alive, until one day, something changed. Daniel was watching from the bench when Zayn said, "Let's try something different today." He placed a belt under Lily's knees and nodded to Daniel. "We're going to help her lift her knees, just a little. She'll do the rest." Daniel blinked. "You sure?" Zayn didn't answer. He didn't have to. Together, they lifted and, for the first time since the accident, Lily's knees moved under her own strength. Not much, not even an inch, but it was hers. Daniel didn't know whether to laugh or cry. So he just stood there, stunned, as Lily looked at him and whispered, "Did you see that, Daddy?" He had. And he couldn't look away. But the story doesn't end there, because the following Sunday, something happened that no one expected. Something that would change everything, not just for Lily, not just for Daniel, but for everyone who had ever passed by a beggar child on the street and assumed they had nothing to offer. It started with a whisper. A rumor that the millionaire's daughter had taken her first step. People started whispering about it in coffee shops, hospital waiting rooms, even on the city buses. At first, it was just a curious rumor that a little girl in a wheelchair had moved her legs again, not inside a hospital, not with doctors, but in a public park, under the guidance of a boy wearing duct-taped boots. Some dismissed it. Others leaned in closer, wanting to know more. The story spread the way all real stories do, quietly, but with power. Daniel didn't mean for any of it to get attention. He wasn't trying to make headlines. He just wanted his daughter to walk again. But sometimes, when something remarkable happens in plain sight, people take notice. By the fifth Sunday, they weren't alone in the park anymore. There were other families there now. A mother pushing her son in a walker. A father with his teenage daughter, recovering from a stroke. They didn't ask for a miracle. They just wanted to see if what they'd heard was true. Zayn didn't act surprised. He greeted each family the same way, with that calm, focused presence. He didn't promise anything. He never said the word miracle. He just asked questions, offered warmth packs, showed them how to stretch, how to apply gentle pressure, how to notice the small signs of progress. And somehow, that was enough to give people hope. Daniel watched all of it quietly, standing back at first, but always keeping an eye on Zayn. The boy had a way of speaking that made people feel seen. Even though he barely talked about himself, everyone trusted him. And for Daniel, that trust started to feel like something sacred. He still didn't know much about Zayn. Where he slept at night, where he came from, who took care of him. When Daniel asked gently one evening after a session, Zayn only shrugged and said, "Around." That answer sat heavy in Daniel's chest for days. Then came a Sunday that changed everything. It was early morning, cloudy and cool. Daniel and Lily arrived at the park to find Zayn already there, as usual. But something was different. Zayn looked tired, his eyes darker than usual. He still smiled, still laid out the towel and unpacked his supplies. But Daniel noticed how slowly he moved, how he winced when he stood. Lily noticed too. "Zayn, you okay?" she asked softly. He nodded once. "Just a long night." Daniel crouched next to him. "Where were you last night?" Zayn hesitated. Then quietly, "At the shelter. But they were full. So I stayed behind the church." Daniel's jaw tensed. "You slept outside?" Zayn didn't answer. He just started warming the rice packs like he always did. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the boy who had helped his daughter lift her legs, who had given her more than doctors ever could, and yet had no bed to call his own. He stood at the window for hours, wrestling with a feeling that wouldn't let go. The next morning, he made a decision. When Zayn showed up the following Sunday, Daniel met him at the curb. "I want you to come stay with us," he said. Zayn blinked. "You serious?" Daniel nodded. "You've done more for my daughter than anyone else. You deserve a warm place to sleep. You'll have your own room, your own bed, no strings attached." Zayn looked down at his boots. "I don't want to be in the way." Daniel smiled. "You already changed our lives, kid. There's no way you could ever be in the way." That night, for the first time in a long time, Zayn slept in a real bed. Lily knocked on his door the next morning, dragging a blanket behind her. "Wanna help me stretch?" she asked. Zayn grinned, pulled on his beanie, and followed her down the hall. Days passed, then weeks. Zayn became a quiet part of their home, respectful, thoughtful, always helping. Daniel noticed how Zayn drew in the margins of his school books, sketched movement and anatomy like someone years beyond his age. The boy had a gift. That much was clear. One night, while drying dishes, Daniel asked him, "Do you ever think about going back to school?" Zayn shrugged. "I used to like it, but it's been a while." You're smart, Daniel said. Smarter than most adults, I know. If you want to go back, I'll help you. Zayn smiled a little, almost shy. Okay. While the household grew warmer, the outside world grew more curious. A reporter showed up at the park one Sunday, having heard the story from a nurse at the hospital. She watched quietly as Zayn helped a boy with cerebral palsy stretch his arms. She didn't interrupt. Just observed. Later, she asked Daniel if she could write something, just a small piece. Daniel asked Zayn, and Zayn said yes, as long as it wasn't about him. It's about them, he said, gesturing to the kids. It always was. The article ran the next week with the headline, "The Boy in the Beanie, a Park, a Towel, and the Return of Hope." It didn't mention Zayn's full name, but people still found him. A non-profit offered tutoring. A retired physical therapist offered mentorship. A local diner started bringing bagels every Sunday. Harrington Park, once quiet and forgotten, became a place of healing, not because of fancy machines, but because of one boy who refused to stop showing up. But not everything was simple. As more people came, so did the questions. A city official showed up one morning, clipboard in hand, talking about liability. Who's supervising these sessions? He asked. I am, Daniel said, stepping forward, and you are. Daniel offered his card. The official read it, eyebrows rising. You're Daniel Carter. I am. And you're letting this child provide therapy to dozens of families. No, Daniel said. I'm watching a child share what he knows and do more good than most adults with degrees. The man left without another word, but the tension lingered. One Sunday, a woman in a stiff blouse stood on the sidelines, arms crossed. She didn't smile, didn't speak, just watched Zayn work with Lily. When Daniel approached her, she introduced herself quietly. I'm from the Department of Family Services. Daniel's stomach sank. Why are you here? We received a report about a minor living in an unregistered household. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He's not just any minor. He's my friend. He's helping people. That may be true, she said. But if he's not in school, and he's not under the legal care of a guardian, we have to investigate. Daniel didn't sleep that night, neither did Zayn. They sat on the porch after Lily had gone to bed. The stars scattered across the sky like puzzle pieces. Zayn broke the silence first. They're gonna take me, aren't they? Daniel looked at him, his heart aching. Not if I can help it. I don't want to leave, Zayn said. I finally feel like I belong. You do, Daniel said. You belong, right here. But belonging, it turned out, wasn't enough for the system. 2 days later, Zayn didn't show up at school. The tutor hadn't seen him. The guest room was still made. His beanie, missing. Daniel drove to every shelter he could think of. Asked every volunteer, every worker. No one had seen him. It was as if Zayn had vanished. Lily cried herself to sleep that night. Daniel stayed up in his study, phone in one hand, laptop in the other, calling, emailing, searching. But no one knew where a boy named Zayn with no last name had gone. Then, 3 days later, Daniel's phone buzzed, an unknown number he picked up. Low, a soft voice on the other end. It's me, Zayn. Daniel stood up, nearly knocking over his chair. Where are you? I'm okay, Zayn said. I just needed time to think. Please come home, Daniel said, voice cracking. Lily's been asking for you. I will, Zayn whispered. But there's something I need to do first. What? But the line had already gone dead. That night, Daniel stood by the window again. The same spot where he once stared out into the quiet, wondering if his daughter would ever walk. Except now, he wasn't just worried about Lily. He was worried about the boy who'd made her believe she could. The city had grown quieter that week. The park hadn't been the same. Parents still showed up, but their eyes searched for the red beanie that never arrived. Until one Sunday, just before noon, someone pointed down the path. A figure was walking toward the park. Boots, patched with duct tape, beanie pulled low, notebook tucked under one arm. Zayn was back, and behind him, 3 kids in wheelchairs, 1 on crutches, 2 more walking nervously with their parents. Zayn didn't say a word. He just walked to the center of the park, laid down the towel, and turned to the crowd. Let's begin. The park fell quiet when Zayn returned. Not the kind of silence that comes with fear, but the kind that comes with all like people knew something important was about to happen. The kids stared at him, wide-eyed. Some of the parents looked like they wanted to rush forward and hug him. Others just stood there, uncertain, wondering what had brought him back. Zayn didn't say much. He simply unpacked his old gym bag, laid out the familiar towel beneath the big oak tree, and motioned for the first child to come forward. It was a little boy with shaky legs and braces that wrapped around both ankles. His father carried him up, nervously watching Zayn's every move. Zayn looked up and offered a small smile. "You're safe here, let's just try." And they did. Daniel stood off to the side, his heart beating fast, watching as Zayn moved from one child to the next. It was like he hadn't missed a day. His hands knew exactly what to do. His words still carried that same quiet calm. When it was Lily's turn, she wheeled herself forward and grinned at him like nothing else mattered. Zayn knelt beside her and whispered, "You ready to show them how it's done?" She nodded, eyes shining. With Daniel supporting her gently from behind and Zayn steadying her knees, Lily stood, stronger than before. She didn't tremble this time. She didn't look afraid. She looked proud. Then, one foot moved forward. Then the other. 3 full steps. People clapped. Some wiped away tears. One woman knelt to the grass and just whispered, "Thank you, God." Daniel felt his throat tighten. Not just for Lily, but for everything Zayn had done quietly, patiently, without expecting anything in return after the session. Daniel sat beside Zayn on the bench. "I thought we lost you," he said softly. Zayn looked down. "I thought maybe I shouldn't come back. That maybe I was causing more problems than help." Daniel shook his head. "You're the reason my daughter walks. You're the reason half these kids believe in themselves again. You're not a problem. Zayn, you're the answer." Zayn looked out over the park, kids laughing, parents smiling, the air warm and full of something you couldn't see, but could definitely feel. "I missed this," he admitted. Daniel nodded. "We missed you too." A few days later, something unexpected happened. The article that had once run quietly in the back of the newspaper had been shared online by one parent, then another, then another. Soon, it caught the attention of a local TV station. A reporter came with cameras this time, asking for an interview. Zayn was hesitant, but Daniel leaned in and said, "Tell your story, Zayn. Someone out there needs to hear it." So he did. Not everything, just enough. Enough to say that his mum had been a healer, that he missed her, that helping others made him feel close to her again. He didn't talk about sleeping behind churches or going hungry. He only talked about the kids. About how they deserved someone to believe in them. The video went viral. Soon after, a local non-profit reached out. They wanted to build something, a real space, a center where kids like Lily, and kids from families who couldn't afford therapy, could come every week for free. And they wanted Zayn to help lead it. "But I'm just a kid," he said. "You're more than that," the woman on the phone told him. "You're the reason we believe this is possible." The mayor invited him to City Hall. A senator sent a handwritten note. A scholarship offer came from a private school across town, one that had never admitted a student like Zayn before. He read every letter carefully. He didn't get too excited. But when he showed Daniel the scholarship paper, his hands were shaking. "Just a little. You should go," Daniel told him. "You have more to give." Zayn looked at Lily, who was now climbing up 2 steps with Daniel spotting her from behind. "I don't want to leave her. She's walking because of you," Daniel said. "She's not going to forget that. None of us will." That night, sitting at the kitchen table over cereal and apple slices, Zayn finally said, "Okay." But not everything ended perfectly. Zayn still missed his mother every night. Daniel still worried that the world would expect too much from a boy who gave so much without asking. And Lily still had days where walking felt hard, but they were together, and they were healing. The grand opening of the center happened 6 months later. They called it the Hope Step Project. Zayn cut the ribbon. Lily walked the first 10 steps of the hallway on her own. Daniel stood with his hand over his heart, tears in his eyes. Zayn didn't say much that day. He never needed to. His actions had already said everything. Before the sun went down, Lily tugged at his sleeve. "What? If you never sat outside the hospital that day?" Zayn looked at her and smiled. "Then maybe you never would have believed you could walk." She shook her head. "No. I think I always could. I just needed someone to remind me." And that was Zayn's gift. He didn't fix people. He reminded them they weren't broken. So if you ever pass a quiet park and see a group of kids laughing, moving, trying, and a boy with a red beanie guiding them gently, stop for a minute. Watch closely. You might just see what hope really looks like, because in a world full of noise, sometimes the smallest voice, the one you almost miss, up changing everything.